All right, everybody, welcome back. I got a quick question to y'all. I figured this out here a couple of weeks ago, and I'm realizing that maybe I was kind of duped. Maybe I just don't understand how these work. Got a truck going by, obviously. But I got into that whole thing of that I needed the 7 foot, 7.5 foot rods. You know, everybody's got to have. No one wants the 6.6s, no more 6 footers, 5.5s. It's got to be 7 foot. It's got to be 7.5. And I kind of fell into that. I do have 7 foot rods. I have 7.5 foot rods, 7.6s, whatever you want to call them. This one here is a 6 foot Mike Iaconelli, just a generic little rod. I use it for my light stuff. I'm throwing a grub on it today. It is a 6 foot rod. It's a 6 foot medium action rod. But what I realized is that the 6 foot in the rod actually includes all that's behind the reel. So I have damn near a foot behind the reel that's not part of the main part of the rod. And when I realized that on these other rods, I went, wait a minute. So a 7 footer really is not a 7 foot rod. Because I'll give you an example. I have a Tsunami rod. It's 6.6. Okay, you go, okay, well, it's a 6.6 rod. It's not 7 foot, but it's true. But it has almost an 18-inch butt section. I mean, it's if you're talking the back end of the rod, it comes out to about, oh, I don't know, it's probably about that long. I know you've had those rods where the ass end is really long. Take all that off, and what do you have? You have a rod the same size as this one, basically. It's a 5.5 footer. So from the reel to the tip of the rod, you're thinking, oh yeah, I got a 7 foot rod. I'm getting that extra distance. Not necessarily. Not extra, a little lift up on the rod, because you're still pulling the same amount of rod blank from the reel side to the tip. Now, do you get a little extra on the back for like winching things, putting it under your arm? That's fine. I don't particularly care for that. If I'm hauling, bass out of the striped bass out of the ocean, I may need that butt to, lay up under the arm. Need it. But for me, I like rod butts about like that. So if you're giving me a 7 foot rod or a 6.5 foot rod, and most of it's all back here, what am I buying? I'm buying a 5.5 foot rod with a really long ass section is all it is, a really long butt, which I'm going to cut that rod down, by the way. I'm going to cut down probably 8 to 10 inches off the back end of it. And I'll show it to you here before I start. That'll be one of my projects. But I'm going to put a butt cap on it, maybe put some, some washer weights inside of it to even out the balance again. But I mean, realistically, I've got 7 foot rods that are the same way. I've got a couple Sojourns. They're 7 footers, but they have that, 1.5 foot long rear end on it. So if it's a 7 foot rod and it's got 12 to 16 inches of back space on it, I mean, rod butt on it, you don't have a 7 foot rod. And maybe that's the industry standard, how they do it. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they gauge what it is. But if that's a standard, that's kind of a fallacy to me. That's not a 7 foot rod. I'm considering 7 foot to be from here all the way to here. Everything back here is insignificant. So if you're telling me I got a 6 foot rod here and I go, well, from here to here, it's only 5.5 feet. You're not selling me a 6 foot total overall 6 foot rod. But if you're telling me that, that little extra half foot's going to make a difference in my casting, like they tell you the 7 footers, 6.5 to 7 foot makes a big difference in casting. You get farther cast. Not necessarily true, because you're not casting any farther. You got a little extra on the back to hold on to. But you have no more rod blank up top than you do on a 6.5 foot rod if it has a longer butt on it. And that's what I'm saying here, is that I don't know if any of you have ran into that. Any of you have figured that out. I mean, maybe I'm late to the game, but to me that's kind of almost like false advertisement. I'm not getting a 7 foot rod, which I'm good with now. I've used a couple 7 foot rods, 7.6s, and I gotta be honest with you, I'm not really into them. It's the back ends, I think, is what it is. I'm also not liking medium heavies anymore. So a medium heavy and a 7 foot's just not a rod for me. I like the 6.6s, 5.5, 6 foot, 6.5, rods with a medium action, medium fast action is what I need. But with that being said, I do have some rods that I'm going to lay them out here, and I'll do another video, but I'm going to show you the difference in them. They say 7. They may be the same length from tip to reel if you lay them down that way and ignore the back end of it. I know I have a lightning rod it's only a 5.5 foot rod, but I guarantee you it's as long as this one here, and this is a 6 footer. The difference is it doesn't have that on the back. So you're going to have from here to the rod tip the same amount as this, but one's labeled a 6 footer, one's labeled a 5.5. I guarantee you that's what it's going to be. And like I said, I'll make a video here showing it again. But I just want to get your opinion on it. To me, that's kind of false advertising. If you're going to say it's a 7-foot rod, I want it to be 7 foot from there all the way to here. Now, if it's an industry standard, they don't do that. They ought to rethink that standard, because that's kind of a lie. That's like saying, you know, I don't know how to explain it. They're measuring, you have a skateboards. I'll use skateboards as an example. 31-inch skateboards used to be the rage. You know, back in the day when I was skating, good Lord. 30 by 10 and a half, 31 by 10 and a half was the rage. That would be like saying it's a 31-inch rod from, you know, from tip to tip, but realistically it's not, because you're counting it from the trucks, you know, truck to truck, and it's a smaller within between. You have a smaller wheelbase. You think you're getting a bigger board to skate on, when realistically, I mean, that's a bad example too. That may be just a bad example, but anyway, you get what I'm saying. 6 foot is not 6 foot on these rods here. 5.5 foot on a 6.5 foot, 6 foot, 7 foot, 6.5, even smaller, 7 foot, maybe 5.5. If you've got 1.5 foot of 18 inches of rod section in the back, and it says it's a 7-foot rod, that's not 7 foot in my opinion. That's like a 6 foot, 5.5, 6 foot rod. But like I said, I got to go examine the rods I got, get some measurements, and I'll go from there. And I'll repost up here. I'll do a part 2 to this. Consider this part 1. But I really wanted to just get everybody's opinion on this. Tell me what you think.